11 honors lit, and we're getting ready to review for the test next Thursday on Emily Dickinson and Whitman, and this will be posted so you can take a look at that. So we're going to go over the 4 Whitman poems and the 5. I'm going to take off one of the Dickinson poems. Because we're short of time, I don't want to give you the answers. You're not going to remember them if I do. So I'd like for us, if you get out those poems, I'm going to sit here and wait for you to get out the poems. I do the first step. Make sure you have the poem and look at it.
Will we know which one you're taking out?
I'm going to tell you in a minute, yeah. It's the one we haven't done.
Okay.
I'll tell you which one it is. We started with Whitman, so we'll do it in that order. All right, so again, who you need to remember for each poem who the speaker is, what the main idea is, what the literary devices used are, and theme. So main idea and theme are kind of the same. So we start with I Hear America Singing. You even have questions. If you have that in front of you. Do you remember, in this case, there is an I there, and all we can say is the I is probably who? Well, what's one option always?
Walt Whitman.
The poet. Now that's not always, in fact, it's usually not the answer. But with Walt Whitman, it typically is. He doesn't create a persona through which he speaks. He uses himself. And Emily Dickinson is the same way. You know, still, it's not exactly that person. You know what I mean? Even though you kind of take on a persona when you write. So, all right, so the speaker. The main idea and theme. I Hear America Singing tells you in the title a lot that you need to know. So what's the theme and main idea?
America's rejoicing.
Yeah, why?
They're singing carols and stuff.
Yeah, what do you mean? They literally are singing carols? Look at it again.
Not literally, but
I hear America singing.
yeah, that's not.
Keep reading.
The very carols I hear.
Keep reading.
Those of mechanics, each one singing, is as it should. Let them strong.
We'll just do one more line.
The carpenter singing his as he measures his
So do you remember what the poem is talking about? It's really not talking about singing at all. What's it talking about? Look at it. You got it questions there. You got answers. I don't need to tell you.
I have their singing, and it's a metaphor because they're happy with their work.
It's about work. It's not really about singing. It's about working.
Yeah.
There are 8 jobs there, and then women are mentioned 3 additional times doing kind of what it would have been more traditionally women's work. So that's 11 jobs mentioned. And you said, Sarah, that they're happy at their work, right? And what did all the jobs have in common? Yeah.
They like take ownership in their tools, and they're all Americans.
Good. So they're all happy. They're all singing. They're all Americans. And you said tools. What sort of jobs typically require tools? I mean,
Carpenter.
What kind of jobs would carpenter jobs? I mean, he mentions carpenter, mechanic, mason, boatman, shoeman, and so forth. They all have tools, yeah.
labor jobs.
What?
You mean working with their hands? type, yeah, they're skilled labor, but it's still working with your hands, building things. And so the poem focuses on that group of people, and they're singing, maybe literally, maybe not, but they're singing. The singing represents their happiness at their work, and they are all Americans. So the jobs are all different. They're not all carpenters, right? But they all work with their hands. So the poem sort of celebrates the diversity and the unity of America. Because we're still all individual, have individual skills, jobs, and so forth. But we're still Americans. We're all singing different songs, but we're still singing. So I think that explains the title or the theme and the main idea. It's a celebration of the unity and diversity of America. And one of the most important things about any human being is what they do for a living, what their work, right? What was the one literary device we mentioned? Where is it?
The singing.
Okay, that's a good one. It's not really singing, so it's comparing to singing. So they're really two, yeah.
Is a catalog in there?
Yes. No, a catalog is a different, but that's what I was looking for. So catalogs are lists, and so other than the singing metaphor, the poem just consists of a list of 11 different jobs. And why would you? That seems kind of boring to make a list, like somebody's grocery list or to-do list. That's not an exciting thing you want to read about. So what do lists contribute? Why is listing here? And we're taking too long for this, but yeah.
It sort of shows the vastness.
That's it. I like the word. And he's trying to capture what American work is like, so he lists different kinds of jobs, although they're all the same kind of category of jobs, because he's the poet of a common man. He's not the poem of the college graduates and the lawyers and the doctors and the politicians. He considered himself the poet of the common man. By the way, in any culture, the common man is common for a reason. The word means not only that they're ordinary, but that's where you see most people. They're common. It's most common to see common people. That's why we get the name. All right, so those are the kinds of things you need to know for all of these. Fortunately, there are only 4 of them. If you have it, turn the page. We also did the learned astronomer. Again, speaker. Who's the speaker? You have to look at it.
A student.
That would be correct. Now, is it Whitman? I don't know. But I like that answer better. It's a student of some kind. Doesn't have to be Whitman, because it's any student. All right, and so what is the main idea and the theme of the book, of the poem? If you have to just glance over it quickly.
Learning.
Yes. Let's be more specific. Learning particularly about what? Stars.
Charts and diagrams.
Take it one more step. There are actually 2 types of learning about stars. What were those 2 types?
Learning in a classroom and like actually watching the
So,
stars.
by experience or firsthand. Although it's about stars, does it have to be about just stars? No, because you could apply that to anything you learn, correct?
Correct.
So that's the theme. But what is the main idea? What is the meaning? What does he say about those 2 types of learning in the poem?
That classroom learning can be boring
And
learning through experience is refreshing and
is a weapon. Be careful what you do out there.
whatever.
I'm sorry, we were interrupted. I apologize. I was interrupted, and then I interrupted you, so sorry. Would you repeat that?
Yeah.
you said the work, I mean, the classroom, he portrays as boring.
Yeah,
Need to keep it up.
but he likes learning from experience.
Right, and the other question is tied into your answer. What device does he use, or devices does he use to portray that? The fact that classroom work to him was boring, firsthand experience to him was not. What devices did he use to convey that message? Yeah,
Well, at least for the first part, that he thinks that classroom learning is boring, it's 8 line down, it's how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick.
okay, so he directly tells us.
Just outright saying.
Yeah, he just states it, that he became tired. What else does he do, though, to make us feel, telling us that he became tired and sick, doesn't necessarily make us tired and sick? What does he do to help us feel what he felt? Bored, tired, and sick. Look at the poem. What is he, you know, it's not really a complicated question. You don't have to know some fancy word to describe it. Look at the poem, and what makes those first 4 lines seem more boring than the last 4 lines?
It's like, classroom work.
All right, so what devices he used to whatever you're saying? You said it a minute ago, actually. You're not going that next step. Just all you have is, it's right there in front of you. What does he do to make classroom work seem boring? James?
Well, in the first 4 lines, he starts with when.
That's called repetition. There's a fancy name for that, anaphora. You don't need to know that. And I notice most of you aren't writing this down. Like, why are we doing it? Will you remember it in a week? I don't know. So one of the questions you're going to have to answer is, what makes it seem boring? And repetition helps to do that. You repeat something over and over. Okay, I get it. But along those lines, Jameson, what else is he? It's not repetition exactly. What else does he do? There's one other thing he does. Ben, without knowing what he was talking about, maybe said the answer a few minutes ago. Yeah.
Well, when he's talking about the classroom, he uses things like sitting, which could make you feel cramped, and then the adjectives that he uses for going outside is gliding.
Oh, that's great. You see that? It's sitting and hearing is contrast to rising and gliding. She's incorporated the second part of the question is, what does he use to make it seem better outside? What I was getting at with Ben, he said something about, I think you said this, the proofs, the figures, the charts, the diagrams. That's not repetition, but it is listing. And it's listing things that aren't that exciting. Proofs, figures, columns, charts, diagrams, add, divide, measure. So at least 8 times he lists an activity. It's really not an activity, it's more of a passive thing. And that creates this feeling of monotony, which is the poem becomes monotonous. And then the second half of the poem, like Emma said, he changes his style to indicate that this is more play. Not just tell us, I became sick and tired. He shows us. And then he doesn't just tell us, I like being outside better. You get that from the words he uses, like he wandered in the mystical moist night air, looked up, perfect silence. So the description in the second part is a lot more pleasant. By the way, mystical moist, what literary device?
Alliteration.
So he uses alliteration to create a pleasant sound, and so I think he got it. That's all we did with that poem. So one more place, or 2 more places. Oh, Captain, my Captain. A completely different kind of poem, a poem with meter and rhyme. The first 2 poems use his typical free verse, which is what he uses, free verse. That's primarily what he uses, but he didn't do that here. Okay, there is an I. Is there an I? Yes, there's a ma and an I. So who's the speaker in the poem? "Oh, Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done." Then later he says, "But I, with mournful tread, walk to death." So who is that?
The crewmate.
The what?
The crewmate.
Okay, he does appear to be a crewmate, that's an interesting word. A shipmate, yeah, same thing. It's a good word. So I think that's enough. It's not Whitman. Whitman was, as far as we know, never on a naval ship in the war, so it's not really Whitman, but it's a fellow crew member. Now this poem, what is its main idea? And what is its theme? Who is the captain? Yes.
Is this the one about Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War?
It is a poem about Abraham Lincoln. And you keep going. You said something about the Civil War.
Whoever the speaker is mourning the death of Abraham Lincoln,
But celebrating what else?
the end of the Civil War.
That's right. So both are in the poem because he died 1 week after Appomattox. Lincoln was assassinated a week after Lee and Grant. Lee surrendered at Appomattox. So they almost happened simultaneously. So that's the theme. What is his meaning, or what is the idea that he portrays in it? The theme is what it's about, but that's not the meaning or the idea. What does he say about Lincoln? What's his attitude toward Lincoln? Well, just read the first 2 lines or the first stanza. You'd have to read the whole stanza.
He respects him.
And so he's dead. So what is he doing now? When someone dies you love, what do?
Mourning.
You mourn, you grieve. So he's grieving the death of Lincoln. In this case, what is the literary device or devices used? And there are many, but we kind of pointed out one, yeah.
Apostrophe.
Very good. I'd forgotten that one. Yeah, the whole poem is based on an apostrophe, which you all remember, of course. You want to explain the apostrophe?
He's addressing Lincoln.
Lincoln's dead. I'm going to add a second one because although that does carry through the whole poem, there's another one. And this isn't really a literary device, but it is a poetic device. That is the rhythm of the poem, the structure of the poem. We pointed out. Just looking at it, what do you notice about the structure of the poem? Look at it.
It's longer.
What's longer?
The stanzas.
What do you mean? It's longer than what?
It's longer than all the other poems.
Okay. But just take the poem in itself. What do you notice about the way it's put together? Again, visually,
There are 8 lines.
okay, what else?
They rhyme, but end.
They do. But again, kind of pull back a little bit and look at the poem. Just the way that it looks on the page. What do you notice about it?
It's all like the same, like each line's about the same length.
Well, that's not true.
Each one ends at like fallen, cold, and dead.
What?
Each like one of the stanzas ends at like fallen, cold, and dead.
That's true. But he went back and said each one, look at that first stanza. Is each line in that stanza the exact same
Yeah,
length?
they're all different.
Well, not all different. Describe it.
The first 4 are pretty long.
That's right.
The last 4 are pretty short.
That's all I'm asking you. It's just what's obvious. It's right in front of you. 4 long lines and 4 short lines. And so what did we say? What's the content of the first 4 lines in every stanza?
Talking about the captain.
Yes, but what else? He's talking to the captain. And what else can we say about it? Look at it again. Compared to the last 4 lines.
It's happy that
The
actually.
first 4 are happy because the war is over and he's talking to the captain and he's saying, "Captain, look here. Captain, captain." But what does the first 4 address in last 4 in every line, every stanza?
Abraham Lincoln being dead.
Yes. So of course that's not happy. But oh, bleeding, oh, heart, 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 bleeding drops. So that's all we're gonna say about it, that the first 4 lines are the happy lines, and the last 4 lines of each stanza are the sad lines. If he's bothering, you can move, so that's gonna be a problem. And can I mention one other thing? Why are the first 4 happy lines long, and the last 4 unhappy lines short? What's the explanation? Why couldn't it be reversed? And it possibly could. But what's the effect of having the happy lines long and the short lines sad, or the sad lines short?
Gives the poem a happy vibe.
What?
It gives the poem a more happy feeling because there's more.
Oh, possibly. What else? I mean, this is just, I don't know if this is always true, but it seems like if you're happy, you would talk more. If you're really sad, you know, like really, really sad, it's hard to get it out because you're choking up because of the sadness of a moment. I don't know if that's just kind of my personal view of it. It's undeniable that's what it is. The first 4 are happy, they're long. The last 4 are not happy, they're short. But what the effect of it, you might see something else, but that's one way I think that you could answer that.
On each of the 3 sections, the very last line talks about him being fallen, cold, and dead.
You know, somebody mentioned it a minute ago, and I had missed that. That's exactly right, which is what? If you say the same words over and over, it's repetition.
And then
So, yeah.
the second to last line for each of the sections mentions Abraham Lincoln being on a deck, like dead. And then I think for the third to last one for each of them, it's referencing like death.
Well, that's the kind of analysis that I appreciate, because you're looking at it, you're seeing patterns. It didn't take long. It's not, you know, you're the only one who noticed it, and I respect that. You know, you found it pretty easy when you looked at it. It's not like that. It's terribly difficult. So, well done. So those are the kinds of things I want to hear you say about these poems, to show that, yeah, I get it. I know a little bit more about it. How many have we done? 3? Okay, one more cavalry. And we need to do this quick. Very short. We're back to free verse. It's not rhymed. It doesn't really have a meter. And so what's the main, in fact, the speaker, there is none identifiable here, because he doesn't have an I. So the speaker is a third person narrator and speaker. But what about the subject, or what, not the subject, but the theme? What's the theme? Which is the same thing as saying, what is the subject? What's the theme? Yeah.
About a cavalry group or platoon crossing a river.
Right, exactly. It's almost just a scene, like a snapshot of a photograph of a scene. Because cavalry means horse soldiers. What does the poem say about that? So that's what we mean when we say the main idea. What is he saying about that? And it's also tied up with the literary device here. What's the chief literary device? If you took notes on it, it should be pretty obvious. And remember, I always like you to circle, underline, highlight things. That way you don't have to remember so much. What was the literary device primarily used?
Imagery with the colors.
Very good. And so what is the imagery all have in common? I mean, the imagery is of the unit, the cavalry unit crossing, but can you draw a conclusion about the imagery?
Yeah, I see them. Somebody else.
Oh, I just saw her hand over there get up. Did you decide who wants to answer?
Rock, paper, scissors.
That was Emma.
Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Uh,
Oh, goodness, you got it.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
won.
All right.
All of the colors that are used to describe things are relatively bright, which gives a happy mood.
Very good. What's odd about that? And this is part of the main idea, hardly.
It's a war poem.
And yet it's very upbeat, very bright, almost beautiful. And so what conclusion can we draw about war? Nobody gets shot, nobody gets butchered. What conclusion can we draw about the nature of war? It's a war poem that's happy, that has a scene of peace and brightness. Yes.
Wars aren't always massively bloody, and there are peaceful and sometimes happy times. even
Right.
in this.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I don't want you to miss much of it.
All right.
Yeah, they leave your football here. I don't want you to fumble it on the way.
Fumble it,
I have
uh,
another thought,
Yeah,
that, wars aren't always black and white, straight right or
oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Like, you don't even, well, we do know which side this is. Well, do we really? Because what color was the Confederate flag?
Red and blue,
And white. What color was the American flag?
red and blue.
Even there, you could make that statement. You don't even know if this is a Confederate or a Union Army picture. But yeah, war, even war has times of peace, and it's life. It's not, they're not killing each other all the time. They killed each other enough so 600,000 people died. That's a lot of people, but they weren't killing every day in massive numbers. So. All right, so just to speed things up, which I thought you did a good job, turn to the Emily Dickinson. We're going to leave out the fourth poem. If you were coming in the fall, I don't know that we did it. It's just will be helpful to take it out anyway. I think we may have, but we're just going to take it off the list. All right, quickly, we can say that for all of her poems, the narrator is Emily Dickinson. All right, you learn about the poem, guys. You learn about the poem or the narrator. Each narrator has a different point, but we can get to that a different way. So, what is the main idea of Frigate? I'm sorry, the theme of Frigate. Theme meaning what's it about. Main idea means what does he say about what it's about. So there's no frigate like a book, sort of summarizes the theme of the poem.
That, books are the best form of transportation.
Exactly. Comparing, and we've already said, if you compare one thing to another without using like or as, you're using what? What device is that?
Alliteration.
No. Without using like or as. Okay, this poem is based on a metaphor. It's a metaphor. It's comparing, as Tucker said, books to forms of transportation. So that's the primary literary device and the subject. But what does the poem mean? What's the poem getting at? So why would he compare books to transportation? What's the idea behind that? Yeah.
So a book is basically, when you're reading it, there's the idea of transportation, which can make you think about transportation through the book.
See, I'm a teacher. I can't say that. I have to say it in a nice way. That's an interesting thought, Ben. I like the way you look at it, Ben. So let's find another possibility.
Well, books will typically transport your mind to another location. You just zone out from reality.
That's what I was trying to say.
You're focused on the book, and a frigate transports you to another location. Just literally just transports
Yeah.
you.
Of course, we knew that. I mean, we knew Ben meant that. Thanks for interpreting for us. Yeah, the transportation comes in the mind and the ideas. So you get, and remember we said that because the poem talks about coursers, frigates, and chariots, each of those are kind of old-fashioned forms of transportation. So that one thing books can do, they can take you into the past, they can take you to other countries. I don't think America ever had chariots, but Rome did, the Greeks did. So you can travel in time, you can travel in space. And that's the idea. Very good. Because I could not stop for death. Now, this does have a speaker, and again, all we can say is Emily Dickinson didn't write this the day she died, so it can't literally be Emily Dickinson, because she didn't die and write the poem. So it is about somebody who did die. Okay, the I in the poem is somebody who's experienced it. So what's the main idea? I mean, what's the theme? I kind of gave it away in just
Yeah.
death. Thank you. What's the idea? What's the meaning? What does she say about death? Death is the subject matter, but what does she say about death?
It's eternal.
Well, that is the main thing she says about it. It's not the pain or the loss. It's the fact that it never ends. That's very good. I think that one word, it's immortal. Death never ends. Now, we're not talking about this theologically from our point of view. This is just her point of view. It's a long time. Once you die, you're dead a long time. So what's a major device does she use? This is a little harder for her. What's a major device? Look at the first stanza. Let me just ask you directly, how does she portray death?
As a gentleman.
Yeah, so what do you call that?
Polite.
What do you call it when you take something
Oxymoron.
abstract and give it human traits?
Alliteration.
Personification. Not everything's alliteration.
Good.
Alliteration's not the answer to every question. But personification here works. And you could add to our meaning, what surprised her about death? Not only the length of it, but she said, he kindly stopped for me. What surprises us about her view of death? He kindly stopped for me. He's a gentleman. So what are we saying about death?
It's peaceful.
It's not so bad as we think it is, except, gee, it sure lasts a long time. That's the kind of what the poem's about. Let's keep moving. I heard a fly buzz. Again, it can't be Emily Dickinson because I said at the beginning, I said the wrong thing. I said, let's just assume all these are Emily Dickinson. We can assume it until not. And here we have tonight, Emily Dickinson didn't die when she wrote the poem. So it's somebody who did, in her imagination, what it would be like. So the subject is death, but that's the theme, the subject and theme. But what is the main idea? What's the meaning of the poem? She saw a fly buzz or heard a fly.
She was like, or whoever was focused on like certain, I don't know, like certain things. Like you probably wouldn't, when you're dying, you're probably not like worried about a fly.
That's what we would think, because none of us have been in that situation. You're right. Yes, Sarah.
Maybe like death is like peaceful and like still.
Okay. But what wasn't it? What did she expect to see when she died?
Heaven's,
Well, she says, for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. She expected to see the king. Now, what king is she expecting to see? God. But instead, she hears a fly. And we said there's a little bit of morbid idea here that we don't agree with. I certainly don't. Is that at that moment, she's expect God to be there, and it was nothing but a fly, which is a very cynical view of faith. But that's what happens. And I think that's all we need to say, except a literary device, which, what did we say about that?
symbolism.
I think I would agree with that. Very good.
Are you sure it's not alliteration?
There could be a little bit.
Yeah, if we looked harder, we could probably find something. Anyway, windows symbolize eyes, and eyes symbolize the people around them, you know, it's like this, there are people there, so, alright. Alright, so, we're in good shape. I wanna see it lap the miles and narrow fellow, so we can finish this. I like to see it lap the miles.
So we skipped,
We're not gonna, you were out of the room, we're not gonna do, if you were coming.
alright.
That's the one we're not gonna do. So, finish, yeah,
Are we doing the full select stuff on
No.
this side?
no, I would like to, but we just. So, can you tell me what this poem is about? And it's I again. So, somebody, is it Dickinson? It could be. It's not about her dying or anything. But what's she talking about? Remember what she liked, what lapped up the miles?
Oh, it's a train.
A train, and what is the literary device? Because the train is compared to what other thing?
Horse.
A horse. So, it seems like a horse, but it seems more like a train, so you can tell she's using the train as a metaphor, the horse is a metaphor for the train. Trains can't go through mountains. They can, horses can't, but the train can go through a tunnel through the mountain. So, what is it, the meaning? This is a little hard because other than describing the train, she says, I like to see it. The train, the meaning is more like the theme. She's describing a train like it's a horse. So what? It's powerful, it's alive, it's almost like it's alive. Nothing really dramatic here, but I think that's the meaning. She's in awe of the train and what it does. I said awe, A-W-E, you know, it's kind of like that's what the poem's theme or idea is. Can I add one other thing? Trains are pretty loud. We don't hear them much anymore, but remember we said this poem is loud. It's loud because it has slant rhyme, it has assonance, it does have alliteration, and it has consonants. So it has a lot of sounds to it, and we won't spend the time to go back, but we did that. We said like and lap, that's alliteration. Step and tanks, stop, it has the S sound, that's consonants. So without going in a lot of detail, the poem had a lot of sound devices. Near rhyme, almost rhyme, assonance, consonants, and alliteration. And then finally, the last one, a narrow fellow, and again, she includes herself here. There's an I in the poem. So I think all the poems had an I in it, at first person. All of them are her imagination. So she's imagining what would it be like to die? What's that going to be like? Or when she sees trains, or when she sees, and of course, what is the subject here? Who was the narrow fellow?
Like a snake.
Yeah, and so that already tells us what literary device is she using. It's a narrow fellow.
Personification.
Yes, she's comparing it to a person. It meaning the snake. And there is imagery here, but what is the meaning of the poem? It's not like the train poem. She's just expressing kind of praise and awe about the train and its power and what it can do. But here, what does she say about the snake? What does the snake, one characteristic and that all real snakes have in the poem? What's a characteristic of snakes? It's noticed suddenness, the grass divides and then disappears, and further on it likes boggy acre. It's like a whiplash. It's wrinkled and was gone. So what's a characteristic of snakes? Not that they're poisonous, some of them are, but what is a characteristic of all snakes?
Her bite.
Yeah, but not, the poem doesn't focus on that. What does the poem focus on? All snakes are like this.
Sneaky.
You can't, sneaky, exactly. You can't miss a horse. Horses are not sneaky, but snakes are. Of course, they're not really sneaky because they're not human. But from human point of view, they appear to be sneaky. And so why does she a little bit afraid of the snake?
Because she doesn't know when it's coming.
Exactly. You don't know when something's coming, you can't see it, and when you do, it's a surprise. And of course, anytime you have a snake in a story, you should think of what was the most famous snake of all time.
Copperhead. Oh my gosh. I am shooting you with this time. Shoot him now.
No.
Do it, Alistair.
You wanna sit in another location next time, they're giving you a hard time.
Copperhead.
What is the most famous snake? It's not a type of snake, it's a particular. Satan is the most famous snake, and so when he says narrow fellow, that, you have to at least think about Satan. So we spent the whole time, we didn't get to talk about Huck Finn. That's all right, we'll do that when we come back. Wednesday will be the reading, right? All right, so make sure you read for Wednesday, you study for Thursday.
It's just, are we just gonna discuss Wednesday?
No, I could give you a quiz.
Okay.